if you want to find copper gold assets in the world anywhere now, you go to Ecuador. We're fully carried on that asset. And that's Curipamba in the joint venture, and that is an investment case on itself. Now, in addition to that, we offer the opportunity to have a transformational discovery on any one of our 4 properties. And knowing the interest that we've got in country and from the majors that are in country, we've got the opportunity to do that on a funded basis as well if we can get a farm out.
Hello and welcome to Crux Investor. I'm here today with Merlin Marr-Johnson. He's a director of Salazar Resources, an Ecuadorian explorer. Hello Merlin, how are you?
Good, thanks.
You're involved with Salazar Resources, this Ecuadorian miner.
Yes.
Had a look, fascinated by the business model, and that's really what I want to talk to you about today. But let's kick off, if you could give us a 1-minute summary of the business for people new to this, and then we'll pick it up from there.
Sure.
Okay.
Salazar Resources is an exploration company listed on the Venture Exchange in Toronto, in Vancouver. It's got a market cap around $15 million, and it is a prospect generator in some ways. It's got an asset that it's being fully carried on through to production, and it's got its own portfolio that it's looking to explore and develop.
Right, so we're going to get into the model in a second, but maybe let's start with how did you get involved? Who did you know in Ecuador to get involved with this project?
Arlington Asset Management bought a stake in Salazar Resources last year in the middle of 2018. And on a site visit, I was invited down on a site visit at the end of last year. I'm a geologist, I speak Spanish, and I was potentially going to be asked on as a non-executive director. Mm-hmm. When we visited the company, we were very impressed by the geology and by the team and the model. What they didn't have as much strength in was a capital markets presence. Right. And at that point, they asked me to join as a director. So I'm actually an executive director of the company, responsible for corporate development.
Right. Okay. So that's okay. So Arlington Fund, based here in London, is the introductory point. Okay.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. So let's talk about some of the things you mentioned there. So you met the team, and you had a look at the geology. So can we start with the team? Because I want to understand. Ecuador is quite a nascent country for mining, is it not? What can you tell us about it?
Ecuador, just a little bit on Ecuador before we get onto the team, if that's
okay. Yeah, okay. Sure, let's do with
that. So Ecuador, as you know, right on the Andes, mm-hmm. And the mineral deposits of the Andes are prolific, the copper production in Chile through Peru, and the geology doesn't stop at the border. It just carries right through Ecuador and into Colombia. But over time, there's never really been a development of a mining industry in Ecuador, principally because they've been anti-mining. The fiscal regime has been insufficiently attractive to get the miners in there, and they've been really promoting the tourist agenda.
Right.
And in fact, there was a socialist government that came in 2010 that was very, very pro the environment and pro tourism, and they wanted to be the greenest economy in the world. The problem was they couldn't fund it.
Right.
And that socialist government, over the course of its 7-year administration, turned Ecuador into a proto-mining economy. They realized that to fund their deficit, to fund their budget, they needed to bring in foreign direct investment, and they needed to bring in export earnings, and the only industry that was left for them to grow in was mining. There were ex-growth of agriculture, the ex-growth of tourism, the oil industry, and they had this phenomenal geology, but no mining industry. And so they really started reforming the mining code. They dropped the windfall tax, which had been put in earlier, and they did a review of all the mining codes across South America, and looked at the tax regimes, and then they brought Ecuador in line with that.
Right.
And so that's an ongoing process. And so from that basis, the country is opening up, and yet it hasn't had the exploration that all the other countries have had. And that combination of the same geological potential, but without the advanced exploration, means that if you want to find copper gold assets in the world anywhere now, you go to Ecuador.
Right, okay. Thanks for that. That's pretty
Sorry,
interesting. That was
a long answer, but
it's interesting. It's absolutely key because do miners have to find a different way of working in an environment like that? Is it going to be more costly to work in an environment like that, or is there a kind of dose of realism within the mining code which has been constructed at the moment?
I'd say that there are kind of three elements to that question. One is that all the miners are looking to come into Ecuador. Everybody's looking for copper gold assets, so all of the majors are suddenly interested in Ecuador. So it's there's competition for assets, and there's competition for ground, and there's competition for good people that know the country.
For meaningful companies? I mean, sizable companies?
Rio Tinto, BHP, Newcrest, Anglo American.
Okay. Yes.
It's all the big guys are in.
Sorry.
The other thing is that it is evolving slowly, so you can't just build a mining industry overnight. The government regulations have changed, and for example, the mining cadastre, the mining department closed in 2018 or maybe late 2017, and it's not going to reopen until Q3 next year. So
why?
Because there was a flood of money that came into Ecuador, and they were just trying to work out how to handle it. The people on the licensing, on the exploration licensing, they were promising too much money in a 4-year term. So you had to, their investment plans were unrealistic, and it was viewed that perhaps some companies were doing a land grab and they weren't going to follow through with the exploration expenditure.
Which happens.
So now they're adjusting the regulation, we believe, so that the mining companies that take out an exploration license will have to spend the money and be accountable for it, and if you don't spend a certain proportion in the first year, you lose your license.
Which happens the world over.
They're tinkering, they're changing the mining code. So, sorry, they're just coming back to the question. The three things. One is that all the big guys are there.
Yep.
Two is that it's an evolving industry. And three, that there will be winners and losers in Ecuador, because it's one of those countries where, because you don't have a history of large-scale mining or industrialized mining, there's a lack of awareness. There are communities that don't want mining or don't know what mining comes, and any change is difficult to assimilate on any level in any society. And in Ecuador, it's no different. You say, we're going to build a mine, and people say, is that going to affect me negatively? And so you have to go through this education process, and the winners will be the ones that can manage their community relations properly.
Right. Again, I think that these are common problems, common threads through different countries around the world. But I agree with you. Can we talk specifically about what you think you've come into? You joined a company that's got what? Like I said, this is the exciting bit for me.
Yeah.
The model that you have employed, or the company has employed to move forward, excites me. I've seen this work elsewhere. Can you explain what you've done?
Well, the reason why I got excited about it is that I've worked on the buy side for 5 years, and I've worked as a mining analyst for 6 years, and I've run exploration companies. And one of the things which is a real differentiator in a company is when you have an income stream and when you've got an asset of significant value that de-risks the downside to your investment.
Right.
So
what have you done?
Salazar Resources made a discovery in 2008 called the Curupamba VMS deposit. It's a volcanogenic massive sulfide. They drilled it out and they've farmed it out.
Right.
And they farmed it out to a partner who's investing $25 million to take it to a feasibility study by 2021, and then they're going to continue to fund it all the way through to production. So Salazar Resources is carried on 25% on a 25% stake all the way through to production.
What's that mean in terms of dollars? What's the income?
The income up until it gets into production is based on advance royalties and a management fee of 10% on the basis of a minimum of $3.5 million a year. Right. So we're talking hard numbers, $600,000 minimum a year income to the company.
Right.
In addition to that, Salazar Resources owns 3 drill rigs, which it contracts out to the partnership and to third parties, and we anticipate about $1 million coming in from that. On an annual basis.
On top of your 600?
The 600,000. So this is the base position is we'll be income generating $1.5 million, 1.6, possibly up to $2 million on an annual basis.
Okay. For a small company, exploration company, that allows you to do what?
That allows us to fund our discretionary, on a discretionary basis, our 100% owned portfolio.
Okay.
So we are an Ecuadorian team. We the team is, the headquarters is in Quito, and we can do extremely low cost, effective exploration in Ecuador for a small amount of money. So that $1.6 million goes a long way. And I should add that we've got about $3.7 million in treasury anyway, which is a function of previous income and the sale of some shares that we got as part of the farm out deal.
Okay, so that's interesting. That's a very good start. So you've got some 100% owned portfolio assets. Are there any which would take the lead there? Are you focusing on one or several at the same time? How do you intend to spend your time and money?
At the moment, we've got 4 licenses which are 100% owned by us.
Right.
I just wanted to say we're not just stopping there at that 4.
Okay.
Before the mining cadastre closed, we applied for 5 or 6 permits beforehand, and we hope to get a couple of those through.
Yeah.
They're kind of in process, in trámite, as they say in Spanish. And we've also done prospecting over the last couple of years, and we want to apply for another 10 to 12 licenses afterwards. So we know that we actually want to grow our license portfolio.
Right.
Now, in terms of where we want to put our money and how we want to do it, it all slightly depends on how we can juggle how we can trade our cards. Because if, for example, we can do a farm out on one license area that comes with a cash payment up front and is fully carried, then we can use that money to invest into one of the other projects.
Right.
So we can play things around. But if I was to pull out a priority asset, I would focus on the Rumiñahui porphyry target, which is in the northern portion of Ecuador, and there's a line of porphyries. It goes the Sol Gold Cascabel deposit,
right,
which, as we know,
quite large,
is a billion tons here or there at around 0.6% copper equivalent.
Yeah.
Then you travel 50 kilometers down, 55 kilometers to an asset called Yurimagua, which is owned by Codelco, and that's over $1 billion, and that's at 0.8% copper equivalent combined. And then 22 kilometers on from that is Rumiñahui, which is the asset that Fredy Salazar has been looking at for over 20 years.
Right.
And we've got the licenses over that, and the preliminary work that we've done on that indicates that it's a porphyry, and that it's gold rich, and that it's a large system.
Okay. We'll come on to that. I want to stay on the how do people make money bit, which I think why people watch this. So you've got a model you've employed, which is identify a target-rich property.
Yep.
You farm it out, retain, or you're carried for, I think you haven't mentioned 25% of that. You may get a lump sum cash amount for that, or not, but you will get some income in the shape of management fees, perhaps leasing out your drill rigs, and what was the other revenue stream? The
advanced royalties.
Advanced
royalties. That's all within
okay.
the 600,000.
Right. Okay. So replicating that model kind of keeps you ticking over and developing more and more of your portfolio as you build this out. So you're an incubator. We are
an incubator, but we believe. I mean, talking about making money and where the share price could go to or where it should be. For example, the Curipamba VMS that we farmed out is at the PFS stage. Earlier this year, we produced a PEA that gave an NPV of $288 million on base case. So our base case NPV was $288 million, and we are 25% fully carried on that.
Right.
Now, obviously there has to be a discount applied to that because we're a few years away from production. So what is the right price for our 25%? One way of looking at it is to look at the value of our partner, which is pretty much a single asset company, and it's earning into the Curipamba project, and they've got a market capitalization of $75 million. But they have to keep funding they have to carry the whole thing. So one could say that our 25% should be at least $25 million, if not more, because they're 75 for 75% and our 25 to make the 100%. Another valuation yardstick is a royalty that was bought on that VMS project. 2% royalty was bought for $10 million earlier this year. And I use a rule of thumb of equity to royalty of around 3 times, which puts our 25% at a value of about $42 million. So we've got these yardsticks, let's call it more than 25, because we don't have to be diluted, and within $40 million. So let's call it in the 30s. Our current market cap is 15, 16. So there's, in a sense, just on the value of the 25% stake, you're looking at a 50% discount to fair value.
Okay.
So
I'll buy that.
A potential double on the share price right there. And then you throw on top of that the fact that Ecuador is the hottest country globally at the moment because of the way the government is going, the fiscal terms, and the geology. The fact that we are an exploration team with a really good footprint of licenses within Ecuador, and the fact that Fredy Salazar, who set up the company, is recognized and renowned as probably the best explorer in Ecuador.
Yeah, look, I think there are people who will give you credit for that, and some people who will see it the opposite direction, because Ecuador is early stages. Okay, so I think just to be fair in all of this, I think you've got some great things, and then you've got some unknown things.
Oh yes.
Okay. Again, it comes back to this model for me, because I've seen this work extremely well elsewhere, and I like that you're employing it, and you've actually, done stage one. You've got advance payment, and you're getting in terms of royalty, you're getting management fees, and you've got the rig things, and you've got this portfolio of assets where you can replicate, and cumulatively it could be very meaningful for you without necessarily needing to go and raise significant cash or dilute shareholders. So that's the bit that interests me. So Fredy's knowledge of country, he's been in country, I read something like 20 odd years, and has worked for who was Newmont. So again, it was not, this is not amateur local stuff. This is significant global blue chip player that he worked for and led the team for. So I like that his knowledge is extensive. I like the fact you're picking up these licenses. The question is, when are you going to be able to start moving this thing at a pace? You've got we'll have circa $5 million bucks available to you. Can you break that down for me a little bit more? I know you've kind of touched on it, but break that down for me. How do you create value? How do you take that $5 million and create significantly more value for shareholders?
Okay, the nitty gritty.
Please.
The nitty gritty is that we've got 4 licenses that we are taking up the value curve through exploration. 3 of those are in Ecuador. One's actually just over the border in Colombia.
Okay.
What our plan for 2020 will be to drill 2 or 3 of those licenses in Ecuador. We've got a budget for 8,500 meters of drilling, and 3,500 of those will be at Rumiñahui.
Right.
Just the way that we are waiting for water permits in all our licenses, and that has actually been a delay across Ecuador throughout 2019. And the Mines Ministry is on it. The head of the water board was blocking the issue of water permits for exploration drilling. There's been a change in the water board. They've now put the new head of the water board is someone with environmental and mining experience. He's an engineer with environmental credentials and a mining engineering degree. So the water permits are coming through more quickly. We expect to have our first water permits through in Q1, which will enable us to start drilling.
Right. Okay.
And we anticipate drilling Rumenyawi in the second half of the year.
For how long? Is it seasonal there?
It's not seasonal. We budgeted a meterage of 8,500 meters as a total plan for the year. What then will happen will be slightly dependent on copper prices and what we discover.
And these are your own drills, so the
Yes.
cost must be relatively low.
Yes.
Presumably. So where are we with this 5 million after you've done all of this? How much have you spent?
Our plan is around $2 million.
Okay.
And it's discretionary. So the smaller amount of work is about $2.1 million, and it dials up to $3 million depending on
what you find.
What we find.
Right.
Yes. Now we don't, of course, want to run the treasury down to below $2 million. So we'll always tailor our expenditure carefully with what we can see in terms of the deal flow.
Are you having conversations now with companies about Rumenyawi, or are you going to wait until you know a little bit more? And what's your expectation of what a deal could look like? What type of deals are you looking for from whoever you're going to be speaking to?
Yes, yeah, all of the above.
Okay.
Because Ecuador is a country of great interest to all the major mining companies, the eyes are on Ecuador, and people are looking for the next Cascabel. Fredy Salazar is well known, and if you are the exploration director or the LATAM exploration director for a major company, one of the first things you do when you come into a country like Ecuador is you call up the team that knows what's going on. So we get a lot of inbound from the guys saying, "Hey, Fredy, what are you up to?" He's well respected within industry, and critically, it's not just him. So between him and his two colleagues, we've got three geologists who, between the three of them, have made a lot of the discoveries in Ecuador over the last 20, 30
Anything
years.
we've heard of?
Fruta del Norte,
Right. Okay.
the Lundin Gold asset. Success as many fathers. He was involved in that.
Yeah.
And there were a number of other assets you might not have heard of as well. And of course, Curipamba, which is the VMS project.
Right.
And you mustn't forget that Rio Tinto got started on a VMS, Agnico Eagle got started on a VMS, Lundin Gold got started on a VMS, or Lundin Mining. These are rich.
Explain to people why they possibly should look at VMS type projects, because we're looking at a few. And it's all down to the reporting, what you can and can't report.
Yeah.
But VMS projects tend to be a lot bigger than exchanges allow you to report. I mean, tell us about what you know about the VMS structures in Ecuador.
VMS is globally. They tend to come in clusters, and so what happens is you drill off one of the pods, and that is really where you are restricted in your reporting, because you will drill off a pod, and it might be 2 to 3 million tons of ore. It's high value ore, but it's still only 2 to 3 million tons. In fact, if you look at it in a distribution basis, most are 2 to 3 million tons.
And it's restricted why? Because in terms of the depth that you're allowed to report on?
They are essentially black smokers on the bottom. They are the fossil black smokers on an ocean floor, and they just form in a one-er. It's a unit. But there are several of those in a cluster.
Right.
Now the Curipamba one is, we've got 9 million tons in indicated. Measured and indicated resources at 2% copper and 2.6 grams gold. It's 5% copper equivalent at surface, which means that the NPV is high, the capital is low, the margins are great. Yeah. And that's where you make money on your VMSs.
Interesting.
Now, the other thing is that if you look at the discovery of VMSs globally, they are very dense and they appear on gravity. So if you people do mag surveys, and then they sometimes come back and do a gravity survey. And if you look at the Iberian Pyrite Belt, southern Spain and Portugal, all the big discoveries are made by gravity.
Interesting.
So Lundin got going on Neves Corvo, Rio Tinto is the name of the deposit down there. And we've just flown the geophysics at Curipamba. It's a 9 million ton core to that deposit. It's a much bigger license area. Watch this space.
Okay, so you're excited by that, but what else are you thinking then end of next year? You're answering the question of yes, talking to lots of people, lots of optionality, but what are you hoping for?
The first stage is to get CEAs with the right groups. The first farm out we did was with Adventus Mining, which was a startup company. Obviously now, for something like Rumiñahui, which is potentially a very large porphyry target, you'd want to be going higher up the food chain in terms of capability and size.
Yeah.
So we would want to have signed a number of CEAs with majors, and potentially we want to do the first phase of drilling by ourselves.
Okay.
Now, if a major comes in with an offer beforehand, which is sufficiently attractive in terms of an equitable funded approach to the development of or the exploration of Rumiñahui, we might consider it. We're not drilling it until the second half of the year, so we've actually got some space to talk to some of the majors whether they really are serious about striking some kind of funding
I guess what investors would want a sense of is your ability to preserve cash, create value, and that means making sure you're not spending more money than you need to whilst having these conversations, because it's all in the negotiation if you've got enough data to have that discussion.
Yes, and the amount of data we've got is relatively limited. We've got
that's my point.
Geological context, we've got outcrop, we've got in one of the riverbeds we've got 57 metres at 2.7 grams a tonne, 55 metres at 2.7 grams a tonne.
Right.
It's a great outcrop. We've got a lot of gold, we've got a lot of copper, we've got a lot of context.
Yeah. But that negotiations are done more effectively with more information.
Yes.
So that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm intrigued about. How much you're going to spend? Will you have enough cash to get to the point you need to without diluting shareholders at any point soon?
There are precedents of good at farm outs in Ecuador on assets. So we can, on slightly more advanced assets. We also know that there are groups out there looking for relatively earlier stage joint venture programs on areas of interest, and Rumiñahui certainly falls within that. It changes the tenor of the conversation, how advanced your asset is or not. What I would say is that we've got the capital and the drill rigs and the time to do our first 100% owned drilling program on Rumiñahui.
Okay.
And I would just add in that is that we always want to have a kind of a flagship asset that we control and that we can take on 100%. We've got Los Osos, which is a high-grade copper-gold project on a much smaller licensed area that we'll be drilling on a 100% basis. We've got a Macara project, which is a gold target. So, and of course, if the mining cadastre opens in Q3 and we get some of the licenses that we've applied for 2 years ago, then suddenly we've got more properties with which we can trade. And so if there's a big drill out on Rumiñahui that perhaps is not within our budget to fund, we'd be more willing to take it on.
But you said right at the beginning, you're a markets guy. I know you're a geologist.
Yeah.
You run companies.
Yeah.
And you've been an analyst and so forth. You're a markets guy. Compared to the team that's currently there.
Yeah.
So is there an expectation that you're going to go and raise some capital? Are you going to need to? Or is this just about helping them construct better deals with these farm out opportunities?
We're not planning on raising capital.
Right.
We've got almost $4 million. We've got $1 million, $1.5 million coming in, maybe up to $2 million. We've got now at the end of next year. It depends on what our opportunity suite offers. If we've got, and ideally we will have structured a farm out whereby we can continue to fund our main assets, and we continue to earn money from our drill rigs, and we continue to earn the income from advanced royalties and the management fee. We may not need to raise capital. If we suddenly decide that we really do want to, the best use of shareholder funds would be to drill an asset 100%, then of course we would consider it, but it's not in the plan.
Okay. So I'm excited. You've said you're excited about the opportunity here. You know, we've done a lot of work on this before we came to speak to you today. Why do you think shareholders should be excited? Let's talk about the financial side of things. You know, you're a public company, you're 15 million market cap, inconsequential in the scheme of things. There's lots of companies in or around your level. Why you guys?
We've got two things. We've got risk protection and we've got upside potential.
Right.
So the risk potential, the risk protection is the income from the advanced royalties and the drill rigs and the management fees. And the other side of the risk protection is the fact that we've got 25% stake in a fantastic asset that is marching on the way to production, and our share is going to grow in value from $35 to $100 million as a kind of a ballpark trajectory.
Without necessarily needing to dilute? Or
we don't have to invest a single cent in that. That's all carried. We're fully carried on that asset. And that's Curipamba in the joint venture, and that is an investment case on itself. Now, in addition to that, we offer the sex and violence of exploration. You know, the opportunity to have a transformational discovery on any one of our 4 properties. And knowing the interest that we've got in country and from the majors that are in country, we've got the opportunity to do that on a funded basis as well if we can get a farm out.
Okay, interesting. So make sure I understand this. So you're saying with Curipamba, with Ruminawi potentially, and the others in your portfolio, you will farm those out. That covers your G&A. You've got income coming through, so no need to dilute.
No need to dilute.
Right. Then on top of that, if one of these partners, JV partners, hits it big with any of those assets, you've got that 25% free carry there. That's the big uplift here. No one's investing in this for G&A, right? This is what the big uplift could be. Plus, here, if I understand you correctly, if you develop one of these assets yourself, 100% owned assets yourself, then potentially you've got control of your own destiny there to a degree. Well, in the context of mining, so that's okay. I understand that. You've painted quite a nice picture there for shareholders, and you're putting a number on that, are you? What does that look like? What could this be without dilution? Where do you think you can move to if you were able to deliver this model? If you're able to deliver this model.
Well, let's just say that our value in Curipamba is $30 million today, and it should be at $50 million at the end of the year, next year, end of 2020. And that's a trebling of the share price right there. Doubling or trebling, that would be fantastic. So we're at 16, 17 cents, depending on the bid-offer spread at the moment. So if you could get that up to 50 cents, that's a tremendous result. And I think we could do that just on growing awareness of what we've actually got in the deal we've already done and the asset that we've already got.
Right.
Now, if we get a good drill hole on any of the other projects, particularly if we open up Ruminawi as a real porphyry target, then things get much more exciting, if that's not already exciting enough.
Okay. Merlin, thank you very much. Nice introduction. Let's catch up in the new year. I want to get into some of the detail around the numbers and your plans for the year, but as a first pass, I think it's quite nice for some of our viewers to be introduced to what is quite a small story now, but again, I do like the model, so I'm encouraged.
Great, it's going to be an exciting year next year.
Yeah, best of luck.
Thank you.